There.
Oh,
Hello? Hey. Tyler McVicker, Valve, or just VNN. Tyler McVicker, VNN here. How you doing? It's been a while since I've had a conversation with you, and I feel as if we need to be able to talk about a couple things. Let me see some Stromboli's in the chat, and we will get going. And, I just want to talk about a couple things before we start taking any questions. This is Letting Off Steam, the bi-weekly call-in radio show that I host. I'm sorry for the background noise if you can hear any. It's like 100 degrees outside, so my air conditioner is going off. You can probably hear that in the background. Today there's a lot that I know I'm going to be talking about, and just to save you some of the questions, I think I'm going to be talking about the Team Fortress 2 situation before taking any questions. So that if you have any questions, you don't have to be the guy to ask it. You can come up with something else. Before we get to that, I do want to explain that this is letting off steam, meaning that you ask me the questions directly and I will answer to the best of my ability. That means I will not be holding most things back. If I have any information on a topic that you really want to learn about, I will be trying to let you know about it. In very rare cases, I will choose to not say specific things, but I will not be telling you that I'm holding things back. However, if I ever do hold something back, it is because either of the safety of a source or because it could be in a video, and it could be much, much better in a video. If you want to be able to get in contact with me to be able to ask some of these questions, there are 2 links down in the description below. One is to the Letting Off Steam Discord server, where if you go into the waiting room, you can be put into a Discord call with me live on stream to ask me a question. You will be vetted beforehand. Or you could just send me an email directly. The email address is tylernewsnetwork@gmail.com. Those emails are added in to my list that I have right in front of me right now. And then, of course, if you do donate a question, those will likely be answered first. Those will be answered before anything else. I got to make money somehow, you know. Before getting started with any of the questions, I think it is probably a good idea just to address the Team Fortress 2 situation. The big old elephant that's been sitting in this room for a while, huh? In case you guys don't know, last week, following the release of the July quote-unquote major update, which was just, in fact, a community cosmetic case, there was a bug that was introduced into the case system that essentially allowed crates series numbers 1 through 18 and a couple in the 80s to allow 100% drop rates of unusuals. It wouldn't drop anything other than unusuals. These unusuals were series 1 and 3 unusual effects, and it caused a lot of people, including me, to feel that this might be the end of Team Fortress 2's economy, which is kind of funny or ironic or something, because literally days before this happened, I made a video that discussed how the Team Fortress 2 economy is the only reason we would ever get future TF2 updates. Well, it seemed as if that this economy was crashing. It seemed as if that Valve had made such a major mistake that the economy as a whole very well could just fall apart. You know, this virtual economy, as most economies, are based on the value of items based solely on the scarcity of said items, and when one of your scarcest items, meaning a unusual hat, is now available to everyone, where is your basis for price? You know, there were arguments made that the keys maybe were to supplant the fact of the unusuals. But also it could be argued that there were arguments made that if unusuals are tanking in price, does that mean refined will go up even higher? now that keys are the most valued item or consistently valued item. I do have a report, a much larger report that I'm working on in regards to the situation of the unusuals, or the crate depression, as we named it on my live stream the day it happened. However, I have been waiting for Valve's official response, because what ended up happening was this was discovered this was a bug that existed as soon as the update was pushed. The update was pushed in the evening of Thursday. Friday morning, in the middle of the night, so Eastern Standard Time would have been around 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Friday morning following the update, people started realizing this was a thing and started uncrating as much as possible. Unusuals fell to pennies. The cheapest unusuals were 30 cents, 40 cents, and crates went as high as $20. Early, the big crate that everybody was using was was one of those supply munitions crates, the big crates. Those were going for like $2 or $3, but some of the early crates, crate series 1 through 18, were going as high as $10 or $15. What's interesting is there were some rumors going around about just how exactly how bad this was going. Some people were saying that somebody was able to sell their crates and buy a Valve Index using Steam Wallet money alone. I want to talk about that in particular. That happened. So there is a person named Mastercoms. Mastercoms is one of the lead programmers on Project Borealis. Mastercoms had a couple hundred Crate Series 82s because of a previous bug that had happened a few years ago, and they were just sitting in her inventory this whole time. As soon as it became known that these crates were worth something during the Crate Depression, Mastercoms sold off all of the Crate Series 82s and purchased a Valve Index. And I can confirm that Valve Index is shipped and will arrive at Mastercom's house very soon. She got a Valve Index through the Crate Depression, probably the one that benefited the most. Aside from Valve, there have been some reports through PC Gamer based on numbers that have been reported through, I think, either Geel or Teamwork.tf. Valve made around $67,000. The current estimation is Valve made $67,000 based on all the economic activity that was going on during the Crate Depression. So this isn't a loss in the short term. And if they fix things, it won't be a loss in the long term. This might have just been a benefit. Problem is, on Friday, after far too long, we didn't get a response until sometime like 3 or 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, meaning that the bug was up for more than 12 hours. Valve tweeted, the Team Fortress team used the official Twitter account and tweeted, essentially saying, okay, we're aware of it, we're shutting down the marketplace. The community market is shut down for a short period of time. We are shutting down trading for a short period of time. And then a couple hours later, they said, okay, the marketplace and trading is back. All unusuals are now untradeable and unmarketable that were uncrated through this event. Some legitimate unusuals that were uncrated during the event through like the summer case are still around. They must have flagged from the specific cases. So if you had an unusual from that period of time, they're unmarketable and untradeable. However, the Twitter stated that this was not the final. This wasn't the final thing. This wasn't the thing that they were going to be doing. They said straight that they were going to say something next week in regards to exactly what the long-term plan for this screw-up was. It is Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as I speak, meaning it's 11 p.m. where they are in Bellevue, Washington, and we have had nothing. There is no word on exactly what they're planning, other than the fact that they're planning something, which was stated in last week on Friday. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that we were going to be hearing something on Monday, but it pretty much meant that we were going to be hearing something this week. The Team Fortress 2 team is a shell of its former self. I don't know the best way to be able to say it. The TF team is a shell of its former self. There's a lot that can be said in relation to what has happened to the Team Fortress team over the last 12 years. There have been a lot of changes, a lot of different events internally at Valve that have caused some people that at once considered themselves wholehearted Team Fortress 2 developers to move on. And now, the number that gets tossed around, especially on my videos and through the sources, is it's between 3 and 15 depending on the day. That means There are 3 people that consider themselves full-time 100% Team Fortress 2 employees, and that number can change. Those 3 are obviously Eric Smith, Dave Riller, Jill. Jill sometimes works on Counter-Strike and Linux. Dave Riller is a mapper, and I have it on good authority that he sometimes helps out with Half-Life stuff like HLVR. Eric Smith was on vacation through most of July. However, my sources did say something was getting released in July, and it happened. And my sources also claimed that the other 12 people, between 3 and 15 people depending on the day, they usually work on things like HLVR, CSGO, Dota 2. But when the time is right and they feel like their time can best be spent on Team Fortress 2, then they work on Team Fortress 2. We're not hearing anything because there isn't a person that would be considered the dedicated community management person. Valve doesn't like giving labels like that, and for the longest time, Valve would have never, ever considered themselves to have a community manager at all. However, it's safe to say through things like the Underlord's Twitter, the Counter-Strike Global Offensive Twitter and Instagram, there are specific teams that value outward communication, especially on social media platforms. There's this new breed of Valve employee that values direct communication with the community, even if that communication can be jokey and memey at times. There is a value there, and certain people within the offices are learning that there is a value there. Team Fortress 2 has Dave Riller, Eric Smith, and Jill. Jill was hired in 2014. Eric Smith and Dave Riller. Dave Riller's been there since 1996. Eric Smith's been there since before Half-Life 2 shipped. They are not a new way of thinking. The fact that they used their Twitter at all was used more for damage control than, oh, this is a good idea. Does that mean that when the big projects finally do get released, does that mean that when we finally do see whatever HLVR ends up being, there is a better chance that we will see Team Fortress 2 pick up in development? Yes. Is that likely? No. It's more likely that they will move on to bigger, that the people working on HLVR will move on to bigger and better things, or other ideas that spawn from the success or failure of HLVR in the first place. So, what do I expect them to do? What do I expect the final decision to be? Not much different than what's going on right now. It's been far too long to be able to roll the item server back, obviously. Something you could do to be able to pump up the economy is to promise future content, but at this point, that's impossible. So, honest to God, there is nothing that can be done that I foresee that hasn't already been done, unless they choose to tease future content just to keep community morale high, and to make sure that the whales in the trading community, the economy, know that future content is coming and the game will get more attention. What I do think is incredibly interesting is, even though this was, at least in the mindset of the community, an apocalyptic event, it was very nice to be able to see the community active, making memes, joking about stuff, talking to each other about possible situations, and it was very nice to be able to see the community have something to talk about in relation to Team Fortress 2. It's very rare, for that to happen nowadays. And as a person who is who I've built my career on more than just TF2, but TF2 played a very large part in not only the building of my YouTube career, but also, making me interested in Valve in the first place. TF2 is very, very important to me. It was nice to be able to see people talking about it, more so than just, oh, TF2, what's that? That's a dead game, meh, and that's as far as it went. The market, I'm probably going to save the bulk of this specific quote for a video, but I did talk to Gil quite a bit through the Crate Depression. Gil owns Scrap.tf and Marketplace.tf and is essentially the go-to person for anything TF2 economy related. And it's, it seemed it wasn't actually as big of a deal. Non-unusual trading makes up like more than 50% of the trading that goes on, the selling that goes on. So it seemed as if it had an effect, but it wasn't as big of an effect as most people probably expected it to be, if you know what I mean. I think that covers everything related to the Crate Depression. In other news related to Team Fortress 2, I do need to stress that my sources were right. in relation to something happening in July. So that means that everything else my sources were telling me about Team Fortress 2 in July are probably also true. So that's really interesting. Once again, people doubt Valve News Network. And they wrong. All right. Let's take a caller. Let's go into our caller here and see what they have to say. Hello, you're on air.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Big fan. My question is, do you still enjoy making the content that you've done for years? Yes or no?
Yes.
And why?
Yes. Okay, that's an excellent question.
Could you elaborate on why?
Yeah. That's an excellent question. I've been making the same kind of content for about 5 years now. The whole format of voiceover on top of gameplay with overlays and music and fast cuts, pre-written scripts that are inverted, traditional journalistic inverted pyramid style, but you insert long-running jokes and different things people expect, like speculation and the speculation Arthur and audios and all that kind of stuff. That is something that I have developed over the course of 5 years. I have been making YouTube content since 2006, and I've been making quote-unquote content since I was as young as I could remember. I remember discovering when I was like 3 or 4 that the CRT monitor that my computer that my mom gave me didn't have internet connection. There was a microphone built into the monitor. When I discovered that, I used to record radio shows like this, talking about whatever was going on in my life. I've always wanted to make things. You could chalk that up to being, living in a tiny ass town where everybody cared about sports and I could run worth shit. You could chalk that up to the fact that I kind of used video games as a means of escape and quite a large source of creativity. But I've always been a person that wants to create things and to make things. And it's never been to create or make just for the means of making money. Obviously, this is my job. I make money. I have to make money from this. But it's a really nice coincidence that the thing I grew up wanting to do more than anything, and the thing I grew up using as a creative outlet, ended up becoming a career path. If I play my cards incorrectly, I'm just going to end up being a high school teacher. But, if things continue to go well, I'm going to be doing this until I'm dead. If things go my way, not Valve News Network specifically until I'm dead. That would be awful. But essentially what you're asking is, I've been making Team Fortress 2 speculative videos for years. And so obviously there has to be a bit of burnout there. And there is. There are times where I would rather not look at Team Fortress 2 in the past. That has happened. But I've actually found that it has to do more with my own personal life than it does the game or my opinions of the company. It has more to do with, stuff. I was in a car accident and I didn't want to look at the computer for months afterwards, but I had to because it was my job, right? And what I feel like speaks to that more than anything is the fact that when I started Valve News Network, which I started Valve News Network in 2011, I didn't come up with the format that I'm using now until 2014, and I've been refining the format ever since. When I started the channel, it was just a fan page. It was like, look at how excited I am for Half-Life 3. Half-Life's the best, isn't it, guys? Team Fortress, I can't wait for the next TF update. Valve can't do anything wrong. That's what it used to be. But the larger I've gotten, the more popular and successful I've become, the easier it becomes for me to actually find real information on the state of Valve, on who Valve is. And the more I learn, the less optimistic I am about Valve. The more I learn, the lower my opinion of the company goes. But at the same time, I am more excited today to be making videos than I was when I was 14 in my parents' basement doing it as an experiment. And that's totally the truth. Part of that has to do with the fact that I'm always trying to one-up myself, right? I'm always trying to create content that if I look 6 months back, I will cringe of how bad it is. And lately I've been able to do that. strive to be able to create even better and even better and even better stuff. And I know that I've been doing that lately, especially if you're a long-time viewer. You can look back and see just how big of a shift things have been. Not only that, but I've found that I'm actually pretty close friends with a few Valve employees that will remain nameless, that I have very long, very cool late night conversations with on like Discord and stuff. And I had one conversation like 2 or 3 months ago where this person helped me write out like a 5-year plan on how to continue being Valve News Network but not being tied to Valve indefinitely. And because of that plan, and because I'm actually following that plan very, very closely, I'm more excited now to be working on this kind of stuff than I ever have been, because I know in 5 years the content will be completely different, but the change will be so gradual that the longtime viewers will not notice much of a change. But then when they look back, they'll be like, oh my god, that's what it used to be like? I love my job more than anything on Earth, to an unhealthy degree, where I have sacrificed a lot of different things in my own real IRL life, and I'm working on that. But to summarize, am I sick of making the same kind of content today? No, because I'm not actually I'm covering the same topics, but the content, behind the scenes is completely different. And every day I'm always excited that I'm going to get an email with cool information, or I'm going to, meet a new person that ends up being really cool. And it's to the point now where I have enough pull, or quote-unquote power in the community, in the greater gaming landscape or whatever. I'm gaining enough power that I am getting a cool email every couple days, or meeting a cool person every month or two. This job is fantastic. I worked my ass off for years to get here. It's the culmination of my entire life, but I'm very happy with it, and I don't foresee myself stopping what I'm doing in any way. And I really appreciate the question. It's a very good question. Thank you.
Tyler?
All right, I'll go back in.
Okay, so let's move on to an email. We have quite a few emails. Actually, I got a donation from I don't know how to pronounce your name. Adriano. Tyler, any chance of you doing an interview with Desync? Desync seems to be commenting on all my videos, watching my streams. If he's up for an interview, I don't know, an interview, but like a collab of some sort. Totally down to do a collab with Desync. Why not? If you want to, donations, I guess, get answered quickly, so. All right, here's an email from a weird email account using Guerrilla Mail. Knowing Valve and how they may respond or act, what might be your guess of the future? Oh, that was a TF2 question. All right, next one. With the recent release of Proton, this is from Dave, Valve have decided that they really do care about Windows alternatives. ProtonDB shows a growing amount of compatible Windows-only games. With many more games on Valve's whitelist, they will be willing to integrate other community-made solutions into the newest Proton update that includes D9VK as an option alongside DXVK. My question to you is, due to the recent uptick in Proton development and involvement from Valve in Linux gaming communities, is Valve gearing up for the end of Windows 7 support? How do you feel like Valve would theoretically end all Windows 7 support, which is 22% of the Steam hardware surveys? Okay, so that's a two-part question. First part, they're not going to be ending support for Windows 7 anytime soon. As you said yourself, that's 22% of the people that's filled out the survey. That would never happen. They're moving towards a larger Linux base. That started years ago. I'm sure everybody remembers when Steam Linux had its first push, and things like Left 4 Dead and Team Fortress 2 were allowed to be put on Linux. This was like, what, 2013? That was done because for a long time, DirectX wasn't being updated or worked on whatsoever. It seemed as if Microsoft, for a period of time, was kind of giving up on PC gaming, or just didn't see any value in it. And then eventually, to combat the fact that Valve was pushing towards that, Windows did go, oh, DX11, oh, DX12, oh, and now they're doing things, but now they're also doing UWP. Valve hates walled gardens. Valve hates limits. Valve hates closed markets. That is the antithesis of everything that Valve is. Valve has a lot of bad things themselves, but the one thing they will never be is controlling and closed. And so the entire point of a push to Linux is allowing for an even larger open gaming market. Obviously, they've tried this in many different ways in the past. Steam boxes, SteamOS, etc., etc. But now through Proton, it seems as if they've figured it out. Proton works incredibly well. Proton is essentially taking known technologies and making them as user-friendly as they can, which is what Valve used to do. It's what Steam was originally. No, they're not going to be ending Windows 7 support, but they are going to be pushing more and more with Proton to make it not a viable alternative, but the better option. That's their goal. When they reach the point where Proton becomes the better option, more people will move over, and then they can start slowly taking away support of the older Windows platforms. But because they're open, the inverse also works. They're not going to just make it an exclusive Linux platform, but they want Linux to be the better option. They want to be as competitive as possible while also remaining as open with Microsoft. It's complicated, but it's what they're trying to do, Thanks for the question, Dave. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to move over to another caller. That's not even funny. Thanks for calling in. What's your question?
My question is, do you think the Great Depression will hurt the game in the long game? Like,
yes.
After a while, will it still be hurt?
Yes, it will be. But not in the way you probably think. Okay, so I'm not taking away TF2 questions. But if somebody is asking I got an email of specifically what's your opinion of the Great Depression. Obviously, I answered that. But I didn't touch on this. The fact that the Team Fortress 2 team used their Twitter and actually said anything publicly is surprising. I foresaw the Team Fortress 2 team silently being like, okay, trade's disabled, okay, they're unmarketable now, and that would be it. The fact they said anything, to me, means that Gabe got off the exercise ball and went, what the hell is going on? You have to remember, Gabe Newell answers all of his emails, right? And I assure you that when the Great Depression really started to take off, he, more than anybody, more than the Team Fortress team, was getting emailed. Because everybody knows who Gabe Newell is. I assure you, no matter how big of a Team Fortress fan, not everybody knows who Dave Riller and Eric Smith are. You know what I mean? So because of that, it's very possible that what ended up transpiring on Friday was the result of Gabe Newell intervening. And I assure you, if Gabe Newell intervenes in a negative way, that makes you a little bit closer to him pulling the plug on whatever it is. They usually don't do that. The only person that has power in Valve is Gabe Newell. And Gabe Newell, there are many examples in the past of Gabe walking into a room and just being like, okay, you're all fired, get out. And Team Fortress 2 is a game that should be allowed to live forever, should be given to the community in some regard. But Team Fortress 2, as I've stated, only really exists still because Valve feels like they can't shut it down because of the economy. Because of what happened there, because of such a small bug was able to make the economy falter so significantly, Gabe might be a bit more annoyed on the existence of Team Fortress 2 to begin with. And if Gabe is annoyed, things will change. Things may continue the way they are for right now, but if there's another... It's another strike. If something else were to happen of this caliber, Team Fortress 2 would likely be over. It's not going to affect it in the visible sense, but it's a strike towards the Team Fortress team. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great question. Thank you very much for your question. Thanks for calling in. All right, we're gonna take. Here's a question from Add Some Happy. That was paid. If you want to get your questions answered, you can always donate on the YouTube chat. Do you add lemon juice in soup? And if no, why? Electra makes the soup. And you're going to want to ask her on Twitter if she adds lemon juice to soup. I don't think she does. But you can always ask her. Got another one. This one's from Jason. It's an email. Hey, Tyler, if in HLVR, will transitioning between maps be seamless? Or will we get Half-Life 2 style loading screens? Thanks for your time, Jason. That's an interesting question. We have no legitimate information on exactly how the level systems or level transitioning systems will work. But I assure you they will be nothing, absolutely nothing like Half-Life 2. Just for the simple fact because of immersion, momentum breaking, and player comfort. So this is a VR game, right? HLVR is supposed to be it's not supposed to be. It is the flagship title for VR for Valve. There's a lot of pressure on Valve to make this game the perfect thing. There are a lot of developers essentially in stasis waiting for Valve to make their move. And they've been waiting for this for a very long time. HLVR, in many ways, will be Half-Life 2, but in VR. But in all the important VR-related ways, it is truly the next generation Half-Life game that we've all been waiting for. So that means visually, mechanically, it's a whole other beast. Thematically, story-wise, the art style, that kind of thing, it's going to be completely Half-Life 2, specifically to be nostalgia-driven, to get you to cry at like, oh, it's Breen! You know? But the idea of stopping a person dead in their tracks in the middle of an action like you do in Half-Life 2 when levels need to load, that will cause some people to immediately take the headset off because that jarring nature of things, that ripping you out of the experience on a dime, will make some people sick. So that would never happen. I don't know if Source 2 has the ability of level streaming. I'm going to have to ask some of my technical friends. I don't think it does. It would be incredible if HLVR had the ability of no loading screens, if it's just one open linear world where you can just go beginning of the game to end of the game, and you don't see a loading screen except at the beginning. I doubt that. It's probably going to be different chapters and it fades in and out, which is another pillar of Half-Life's development that will be forgotten, excuse me. But do I think will it be seamless or Half-Life 2 loading screens? Probably neither. I think it'll be fade in, fade out chapters and maps. It could be seamless. I don't think Source 2 has that ability. But there's no way in hell it will have Half-Life 2 style loading screens where you just stop dead in your tracks. You still see what if you look around, no, and it just says loading in the middle of the screen. That would never happen. No. All right, we're gonna take another caller. Hello, what's your question?
Hello. Hi, Tyler. Pretty simple question. What do you think about... Okay, what are your hopes, fears, and expectations for this upcoming Black Mesa release happening later today?
Okay, so, in case you don't know, there is a fairly significant Black Mesa beta update that's being pushed today in a couple hours, essentially.
I've been hanging out in the Discord waiting for that.
Yeah, and after this show, I'm probably going to be going right live onto Twitch to play it, or to be waiting for it. Black Mesa Zen, the first 3 maps were released like a month ago, and they blew my mind. I don't know if you've seen the VOD, but the VOD exists. It's on Valve News Extra.
I've watched it.
It was the single best community. It was the single best Half-Life thing I've seen in a very, very long time. There were so many different details that were original, yet still very much stayed within the spirit of the game. It's in great hands, and I'm very pleased with what I've seen so far. Now, from what I've heard, it's going to be Gonarch's Lair and Interloper.
I think it's the rest of Zen and Gonarch's Lair, if I remember correctly.
The rest of Zen and so it's essentially 2 complete chapters.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be just as good, if not. What are my hopes? That it doesn't take a complete nosedive in quality. That's my hope. The first 3 maps were so good that I do see it as somewhat difficult to just continue to top the types of things that I saw. However, I do feel as if, given how great that short snippet was, I really do think that it's very possible for them to be able to keep up that bar of quality. Any specifics? I don't have anything in particular that I'm hoping for in terms of like gameplay set pieces and things. I'm not actually trying to speculate much on that because I know I'm going to get to play it, and so I don't really want to spoil myself in any way. You know what I mean? So, I just, all I want is for it to be good, and it's as simple as that. And there's not much time left to wait for it. I was hearing from a developer that it was possibly 6 or a little after 6. I've been talking with a couple developers. It seems as if it takes forever to render these, to compile these maps, and that makes sense.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, they gave the same reason in the Discord earlier.
Yeah, so hopefully it doesn't get delayed until tomorrow. I don't think it'll get delayed until tomorrow, but as it currently stands, we're going to be seeing it tonight. I don't want to speculate on it too much because I end up always being right with this kind of stuff, and I don't want to spoil myself. So, I'm my hopes that it doesn't take a nosedive in quality. My dreams that they accidentally leak the entirety of the campaign in like VMF form or something in the files, just so I can play the whole damn thing. But obviously they're smarter than that. So, thanks for your question. Thank you. It's a
No
really
problem,
good
Tyler.
question.
Have a nice day.
You too. All right, we're gonna move on. We have a donation, $10 from Andrew Freeman through Super Chat. How is Valve / the industry going to handle the security for brain interfacing? If a government gets control of them, could they flag people who show signs of potential dissonance and pacify them? Ooh, that's some Blade Runner-esque shit you're talking about. I don't know. I kind of hate that Valve is kind of forcing my hand on discussion on futurist brain interfacing stuff. I kind of hate that the person who one day came up with the idea for Half-Life 1 is now wanting to create immortality because he's that far removed from reality. However, that's where we're at. If a government gets control of the information through brain interfacing, will they try and pacify different threats? I don't know. Maybe. But I don't want to be playing that. I don't want to talk. We're talking about video games. I don't know. I just think that it's important for us to just kind of look at it with an air of skepticism, because the technology is nowhere near as far as they like to lead people on to believe. And trying to get people to, like, participate in it. I mean, we're having this conversation now, and we haven't even seen anything in practice ever. It's gonna be tough. I don't know. And to be completely honest, I'm Valve News Network because of Team Fortress 2 and Half-Life, not because of brain chips. That kind of stuff makes me really sad. So, we have another donation. Hey, Tyler, do you think HLVR is going to be at least half good without VR comparing to VR mode? So I need to dispel this. This is a huge rumor. I don't know where it came from that HLVR was going to have a non-VR mode. I've never said in a video ever that it's going to have a non-VR mode. At best, there could be an asymmetrical multiplayer mode that's like a side gameplay thing. But the campaign of HLVR will not be playable outside of a VR headset. That goes against everything that they're trying to do. Valve is not trying to create a flagship VR title to not only move VR units, but to legitimize the platform as a whole by allowing people to play the game without a headset. It's never going to happen. The question of, do you think HLVR is going to be at least half good without VR? It's not going to be any good because it's not going to exist. I need to make that known. I get this question every day. Will it have a non-VR mode? What will the non-VR mode be like? And then when I tell people no, I always get, well, how do you know? You don't have information on that. I do. I promise you it will not have a non-VR mode. And that stems from the fact that it's going to be a new Half-Life game that not everybody's going to be able to play. I'm sorry, but it's how it's going to be. It's very possible that Valve, in order to, calm the negative reaction from the deep Half-Life community of an exclusive VR Half-Life game, they might release something else that might be what Citadel is. But in terms of just HLVR, the flagship VR title, you are not going to officially be able to play the campaign outside of a VR headset. Someone might be able to mod in a non-VR mode, and actually, I assure you, someone will mod something to allow you to play it non-VR, but I assure you that experience will be not half as good. It'll be like 5%, because you're essentially completely destroying the game that was intended. You would have to like dumb down very fine interactions with pushing the E button. Cutting it won't work. I promise. I might be the person to push forward a non-VR mode. I might be the person to lead a mod to do that, just to do it. But I assure you, it's not going to happen. Okay? Thank you. I'm sorry I get so angry about that, but I can't tell you how many times I get that question. I get that question so often. And I answer the question almost every time with it's not going to get a non-VR mode. And every time people get angry with that response. I see people getting angry in the chat. I'm sorry, they're not gonna make that. Anyways, we got a few donations coming in. Do you trust Artifact's storytelling capabilities? Well, the question really is, do I trust Steve Jaros as a storyteller? And for me, I can't answer that question honestly, because Steve Jaros' original plan for Artifact had to be cut short when they essentially scrapped everything they planned and started over from scratch. Steve Jaros came up with a pretty interesting and intriguing story for the beginning of Underlords, but we really haven't been fed any story content thus far. The question is, do I trust Steve Jaros as a Dota lore storyteller? I don't know yet. I don't have enough to be able to go off of in relation to that. Cheese soup, yes or no? I've had cheese soup. I have a broccoli and cheddar soup. It's delicious. What do you think about Gunman Chronicles, and why do you think Gold Source and Source didn't get licensed and used by more studios? There's two different questions. Gold Source wasn't licensed and used by very many studios because Gold Source in itself was a forked license from idTech 2. Or idTech, the Quake engine. So the idea of licensing the Gold Source technology more so than licensing the id technology didn't make much sense. Plus, Valve wasn't really that big. Like, Half-Life was a huge success, but in the wake of Half-Life's gigantic success, Valve only had like 30 employees, and most, if not all of them, were working on Half-Life 2 most of the time. You know, old Valve, as active as they were that in that span of time. You had Half-Life, Opposing Force, Blue Shift, TFC, Counter-Strike, Day of Defeat, Ricochet, Half-Life 2. They had like 30 employees. They were better with external communication with Gearbox. That's what led to those. Now they have 350 and they can't release a damn game to save their life. They were just smaller, and they were way more focused on their own first-party development and second-party development than licensing the engine out to, like, mod developers and stuff. They were very focused on allowing mod developers to create content for free, and that's what led to things like Counter-Strike. They were focused on the development tools, and they were really pushing the idea of having a client-side DLL. You know, listen to those radio interviews. But they weren't really that worried about like a Gunman Chronicles type situation, which, by the way, JC could tell you this story significantly better, but that whole situation was just like the guy who was in charge of what was called Rewolf left the game on a computer screen, and a couple people at Valve saw it and went, oh, that's pretty cool, and then it just kind of happened. Gunman Chronicles is more of a Valve game than Opposing Force and Blue Shift are. True fucking story. Gunman Chronicles should be on Steam. It should come with the Valve Complete Pack. But it doesn't. The license is all weird. You had Mark Laidlaw helping with the writing on that one. It's far more of a Valve game than Opposing Force and Blue Shift are. That might be a hot take, but that's totally the case. But then why didn't Source get licensed and used by more studios? It did. It got licensed and used by many studios, and it still gets licensed in some regard. Titanfall 2 uses Source. There is code from Source being used in Apex Legends. Okay? Source Engine still exists. The extent at which Source is being used in Titanfall 2 and Apex Legends are very, very minimal. But Titanfall 1 ran on Source Engine in some way. Source Engine was used many, many times. There's a lot of canceled projects on Source Engine, like The Crossing and all the third-party episodes and stuff, but they were very active from like 2005 until 2009, getting their engine out there, So, yeah, there you go. Donations are coming in, and then we're just going to go right to a call after this next one. Hey, Tyler, thanks for being a cool guy. Thanks, Michael. What are your thoughts on the Valve Index thumbstick issues and Valve's response to user complaints? Okay, so I've heard some stuff on the Valve Index thumbstick issue, and I've heard two different things. Number one, the developers that used the Index controllers, or the Knuckles as they were known, throughout development, were the reason why that we got a thumbstick in the first place. They were like, we need a thumbstick, that's why it was put on. But then when it came time to ship, they were like, oh my god, why is this thumbstick still so small? It sucks. And Valve was like, well, we need room for the trackpad. I'm in the camp that you don't need the trackpad. Make the thumbstick bigger. But as Gabe Newell has said many times in the past, the hardware is being developed alongside the software, so the choices that they are making very much represent the design decisions that are being made in the software that they're making. So that trackpad better be vital to the mechanics of HLVR. If I'm able to get one of my people that help me out with this kind of stuff to make a mod to just completely negate the trackpad, then Valve, you got some splaining to do. Anyways, the trackpad, the thumbstick, I've heard, is literally the cheapest thumbstick, is the smallest thumbstick you can buy. It is the smallest thumbstick that exists that you can buy in bulk for use in a gaming product. The thing is, the thumbstick already is capacitive. It has touch. And they've already responded. There was a pretty significant SteamVR update that essentially allows you to remap, like double clicking and like a lot of different, it essentially it's a workaround from the clicking issue through software, and that's fine. But for a while it seemed as if the responses can be taken as official Valve reactions to the situation, the responses could kind of be seen as, I know more than you don't have the big picture, stop complaining, it's how it's supposed to be. You may think you want that, but I assure you, you don't. That might be what we're going through here. Now they've done a lot in terms of software. They've really been pushing the Index firmware launches lately, and the Index is significantly smoother than it was on launch day, which is surprising because it's only been about a month. How do I feel they handled it? They handled it poorly. They finally handled it in a way that should have been handled the whole time. They released this update to essentially allow software to fix the issue, but that doesn't change the fact that you can't click it, and people want to click the stick. Like, come on. Couldn't you click the sticks on the PlayStation 1? Wasn't the DualShock have clicky sticks? Like, come on. That's like... Have you ever used a thumbstick before? So... Valve or the Steam support people, whoever responded to the things, were very condescending. One of the responses that I saw being passed around was like, "Oh, I've submitted it. We will let you know when we have more information." That's what everybody should have said. But somebody went, "Oh, it's working as intended." Come on, no, it's not. It's not working as if a large group of your community perceives something to be a specific way, it is that way, regardless of if you want it that way or not. Do you know how I know that? Because Artifact didn't do well. This is a tangent, but Valve kind of does this thing where it seems like they think they know better than their own community sometimes. Case in point, when Artifact was revealed and everybody went, "No, I don't want that. No, can we not do that?" Valve's response was, "Well, we're not making a first-person shooter, but I assure you the game is great." It was a great game. They put their heart and soul into it, but they were told on day one, no, I don't want that. They didn't listen. They released the game. Everybody went, I told you I didn't want that. And they still didn't listen. And then after months of the game being like sub 2,000 players, they were like, oh, so as it turns out, we were wrong. Ugh. And the thumbstick is a very similar issue. They want the trackpad. They don't like smooth locomotion, so the thumbstick is useless to them. It's going to eventually hit the point where no one is using the trackpad for anything conceivably useful. And eventually they'll be like, oh, okay, we were wrong. You know what I mean? So, let's take another caller. Hello, hello. Welcome on the show.
Oh, hey. Hi, Tyler. Big
Hello.
fan. So as you may remember, the YouTubers Internet Historian and Desync forced a Half-Life 3 leak in September last year
Yeah.
that you were baited by. What
Correct.
are your thoughts on the whole hoax and Internet Historian himself?
So people like to say that I was baited by that. All I said on the Reddit post was, I'm going to look into this. Like, I haven't seen this. That might look like their office. I'm looking into this. I didn't make a video on it, contrary to popular belief.
God, imagine if you did.
If I did, I should quit.
You do those 12 screens where you just analyzed every single pixel.
Yeah, what do I think of
Oh,
the
yeah.
situation? First of all, I adore Internet Historian. I was a huge fan of Internet Historian before his 76 video, but after that Fallout 76 video, he's now one of my favorite YouTubers, period.
Yeah, that was really good.
That Fallout 76 video was... I don't think any other person could have summarized that situation better than he did. Desync, I don't watch very often, but a lot of that comes from the fact that there are specific YouTubers that make kind of content that scares me, in that, like, oh, that's better than what I make. I'm not going to look at that because... But Desync, I've had nothing but really good experiences with. Desync seems to watch my streams and my videos quite frequently, and I've never had a bad experience with Desync. But then, so specifically speaking to the hoax, the fake leak thing, I think it was hilarious looking back. I think that it is a really good parody of the community that I am most likely a representative, if not the fucking president of. Where we're in this situation where Valve has created this like silent echo chamber where any fake information is information, because like Valve employees have been saying this as a response to my existence. In a world where there's no information, false information becomes the Bible. And so because of these fake internet leaks, they have credence because there's nothing out there.
Yeah, everyone's just desperate for anything at this point.
Exactly. But unfortunately, the real stuff and the fake stuff is there's no way to discern between it from like the public's perception. I could write up a Reddit post about this. Oh, I saw Half-Life 3 yesterday. Here's everything I saw. Alex is pregnant with twins, and those you play co-op with the twins. People would be like, "Oh my God, you play co-op with Alex's babies?"
That doesn't sound too bad, actually.
Well, it's literally just that new Wolfenstein game. But anyways.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. But the point is, it's holding a mirror to the community and saying, hey, maybe don't take everything so seriously. And I agree with that. We're in a situation now where we are getting real information. We're gonna get a Half-Life game at least teased this year. So it's a different situation than it has been for a long time. Half-Life 3, it hurts me inside just saying it at this point. That's where we're at. And I think it's hilarious. I think it can only really be done once. I don't think anybody can do that gag again and it have at all the same impact. But it was a genius gag. It was executed really well. As much as they like to say, like, oh, we're not even trying. It would obviously they thought about it before they did it, and it was a really well executed gag, and I was actually pretty happy that happened. Anyways, thank you very much for it. Was a very good question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me on. You're one of my favorite YouTubers, so it's really cool, being able to talk to you.
Yeah, no problem, man. Always send me an email. I try and respond.
That's good.
Bye. All right. We got a couple other one of these. Hey Tyler, do you know when it is your turn to buy an index? Oh, do you know how to know when it's your turn to buy an index? Index pre-orders are just open now. Like, they're not taking reservations anymore, I don't think. They just have them open to purchase. They saw the demand and are now manufacturing according to that demand. Yeah, you can just buy them now. You can buy yeah. I don't think it's the same situation that it was a few months ago. I don't think they knew it was going to be as much of a success as it ended up being. So, you know, I think that they're now adjusting their manufacturing model to, you know, adhere to the demand. Give that supply and demand stuff together, you know what I mean? Thanks for the $5. Appreciate it. Got another $5. Now, about that beer, IOG. It's me, Gordon Barney from Black Mesa. Hey, sorry for the scare. I had to put up a show for the cameras. Artifact. Wow. Excellent meme. All right, let's take some. Let's look at some emails here. Thanks for the 5. Do you think that DU will be ported to consoles? Oh, Dota Underlords. If that's true, then Valve could be the first to release auto battlers on consoles. What's your opinion? They could be the first to release auto battlers on consoles. I feel like it would really only work on the Switch. They've proven that it worked perfectly with touchscreens. It does. I play it on my tablet literally every morning when I wake up. Controller support for Dota Underlords would be clunky. It would work. I mean, maybe you could do it PS4 with like the touchpad on the controller. But I don't know if it would really work that well. I don't know. Switch would work. Obviously, the Switch would work. But I don't think it would work that well with a control. You see, I'm talking slow because my mind is like, how would you implement a controller system for Dota Underlords? Honest to God, think they're working on it. Honest to God, think it's something that was brought up in some kind of a meeting. It has to have been. Because, I mean, they could be the first one to bring the auto battlers. Yes, and I feel like that's really important. Because they're up against... It's very quickly going to become a very saturated market. And if it becomes too saturated, then, like, no one will want to play anything. Do you remember when, like, Harmonix or whoever put it... Not Harmonix. Activision put out, like, 10 Guitar Hero games in a year or something like that? It was, like, 2009. You had, like, Guitar Hero 5, Guitar Hero Van Halen, Guitar Hero... Band Hero. You remember when, like, they did, like, too many Guitar Hero games, and then everybody hated Guitar Hero after that, right? If there's too many things to choose from, people overall will stop. If Valve becomes the first one to release it on something like the Switch, that would definitely help them in terms of players. And, I mean, Nintendo seems kind of open to, like, you know, cross-platform, that kind of thing, especially because Minecraft works on it, so... Another question. Do you think we'll hear anything about the flagship game at the International? Part of me wants to say yes, because the International is very quickly turning into like a Valve Con. And I would love to be able to see the International turn into like a Valve Con, where like Valve announces things at the International every year. I do think we're going to be hearing something about Dota Underlords. You know, like the full release of Underlords. I do think we're going to hear about that. I do think it's possible that we're going to hear something about Artifact 2.0. Part of me thinks they're not even going to be calling it Artifact. Side note, I think they're going to rename it so that the stigma of Artifact is kind of left in the dust. So we might get a rename. Do I think they're going to talk about the flagship VR title? The only way that would be valuable is if it was available to play on the at the convention or at the International. Like, you could announce something like that, but a lot of the Dota players probably don't own VR headsets, so it's like you're advertising it to the wrong crowd. But if you were capable of purchasing Valve indexes at the International, and if people are capable of trying the game out at the International, then that might work. That also means that they would be working on deadlines, which is against most Valve everything. I don't know. Is it possible? Yes. Do I think it'll happen? It's unlikely. They would have to really play it up in a weird way to try and sell HLVR to the Dota crowd. It's two different audiences. You know what I mean? All right, we're gonna take another caller. Hello, you're on the show. What's your question?
Hey Tyler, big fan of your stuff. So my question was, after Valve's acquisition of Campo Santo last year, do you think there's a good chance of them acquiring more development studios in the future, and do you just have any ideas of who they could acquire next?
Okay, so the acquisition of the Campo Santo staff was not technically an acquisition of Campo Santo as an entity. Valve didn't buy Campo Santo. Campo Santo is still independent. Valve just kind of hired everybody. And what's sad about that is it doesn't seem like In the Valley of Gods is really being worked on right now. I've heard from many different places that the Campo Santo team have kind of split into different other teams. Like, most of them are helping with HLVR, some are helping with the Steam overhaul. And it seems as if HLVR is such a big deal inside the offices right now that it's kind of all hands on deck, and no one's really getting to work on anything like In the Valley of Gods is such a side thing compared to like the first Half-Life game in forever, right? So, do I think they would acquire other studios?
Yeah, and do you have any ideas who?
I don't think they would. The only way they would is if the workforce works well under Valve's umbrella. I don't think you're ever going to see another Valve South situation, which was when they didn't purchase Turtle Rock, but essentially like Turtle Rock was working as a subsidiary to Valve, and at one point was just called Valve South. They're terrible with external third-party development communication. They're probably worse than they are with community communication. There have been so many different things that have happened over the years that Valve could have done with very little effort, as long as they were willing to keep up the communication with these external developers. You know, in that no-clip documentary about Half-Life, they interviewed Randy Pitchford, and Randy essentially said straight up that he heard from Valve a couple times through the whole development of Opposing Force, and they were just kind of left to do whatever they wanted. And that's kind of what Valve wants out of those acquisitions, is just, you know, if we tell you you're allowed to do something, do it as quickly as possible and do not ask questions. If you ask too many questions or if you take too long, we're going to cancel you. And that happened with Gearbox later with Condition Zero. So they're terrible at it.
And that happened with more than just games, like that Team Fortress thing.
Exactly. That happens all the time. And there are many cases in the past where the biggest one is Dishonored. Dishonored, the earliest ideas of Dishonored started when Arcane was still pretty much working under Valve. And then that whole relationship fell apart. I mean, look at Dishonored. It looks like Half-Life 2. Are you kidding me? So, I don't know. The whole last thing is you try and infiltrate the Citadel. Come on.
Yeah.
Do I think... Are there any other companies I can think of that they would acquire?
Yeah.
No. There are probably some, but they're probably so small that I don't even know about them. Like, they're working really closely with Scraggy Rascal Games right now, and they might acquire them. But they're... like contractually obligated to just do stuff with Valve. I don't know. It's a good question, and I'm sorry that I don't have like exclusive, like, oh, they're gonna buy Arcane from Bethesda, boom, or something like that.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, just like trying to think of the possibilities is interesting.
Yeah, true, but it needs to be stressed that Valve is they're awful with external developer communications. You know.
And just internal developer communication.
They're just bad at communicating. They all want to be in their own little bubble, making their own little project, and nothing gets done because there's 350 people. So, thanks for your question. I appreciate it. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, thanks.
Am I caught up on the donations? Yes. Super chats get your question answered immediately. Let's take a look at another question. Is there any info on the canceled Counter-Strike 2? From Ayaya. Yes. There's a lot of info on the canceled Counter-Strike 2 because the canceled Counter-Strike 2 released in 2011 as a different game called Tactical Intervention. Everything was rewritten. None of the assets were used from the Counter-Strike 2 days. But spiritually, mechanically, and thematically, it is the same game. If you know Tactical Intervention... So, okay, what happened was Min Lee was fired from Valve, or he quit. Something happened with Min Lee because of essentially what was feature creep on Counter-Strike 2. Counter-Strike 2 started development almost immediately after Min Lee was hired. You know, the retail version got a couple updates soon after its release. We're now at 1.6, and it was at 1.6 forever. And then Counter-Strike 2 was just always kind of being developed. It was officially talked about in a couple places. You can go as far back as the year 2000. Gabe was talking about Counter-Strike 2. And there are Counter-Strike 2 references in the earliest leaks of Source 2. But then Min Lee and Valve split, and, you know, it's like, what are you going to do? He had this idea for a game he'd been working on for a very, very long time, and he had nowhere to go with it. So look up the game Tactical Intervention. It's a crazy game. It runs on Source Engine, first of all. And it's kind of a continuation of the ideas of Counter-Strike. Open-ended maps, drivable vehicles, much larger, much larger set pieces and things you need to do. Wasn't very popular, kind of a janky game. I'm actually doing a video called The Secret Valve Games or whatever. And it's essentially the different projects that were canceled internally at Valve and then released later under other names or whatever, other companies. There's that TF2 Invasion was released twice in the community. But that's another story. So, any info on the official version of Counter-Strike 2? No screenshots exist. Very little official information other than just interviews. There's a lot of interviews. Min Lee did a lot of interviews. Gabe talked about it. Yeah. That could be a whole video. I don't have the information off the top of my head. It exists. I recommend the website Blues News for trying to find old Counter-Strike 2 information, but I mean, the game spiritually, thematically, and mechanically exists. It is developed outside of Valve, but mechanically, it's pretty much what Min Lee wanted to release, and it's called Tactical Intervention. I recommend looking it up. So, thanks for that. Thanks for that. Next question, we're going to take another email. Looking for a question. Ooh, okay. So this is from a guy named Joe. Hi, Tyler. About a month ago, me and my friend went on a tour of Valve. And I had a very similar experience of that Dota journalist who recently posted a write-up of his tour. However, there are a few points I would like to make leading to my actual question. For those that don't know, a fairly high-end Dota journalist recently got a tour of Valve and said a lot of negative things about Valve based on his or her impression of the company. So Joe says, I felt a very palpable tension in the air through the cabals that I walked past in the corridors and the communal areas. Everyone was incredibly busy and focused, with most people completely silent as they worked. My tour guide himself, who worked on a VR hardware-software integration project, said that he had been working 14-hour days and would have lived in the offices if he had the chance. On top of this, I was told that Gabe Newell had almost abandoned his office and the continuous games of Dota that he played, and was actually spending time working in a cabal on an unannounced project. This was just after Underlords launched on mobile, so it wasn't that. I got the impression that the company was going through an incredible amount of stress. And though you often say that Valve doesn't really care what people think of them, there was an undertone of wanting to salvage their reputation in the public eye. I can already tell this is an excellent question. Would you say that the uptick in public communication from specific teams is a symptom of that? Do you believe that any future releases will be slightly more aware of their fragile position in terms of not being as beloved as they were in the past? Many thanks, J-Corp. J-Corp, fantastic question. Okay. Ooh, and we have this song coming up while we talk about it, huh? All right. So, I've never said that they don't care. I might have. My current stance is that it's not that they don't care. It's that they care, but from their position, what they think is the right move is incredibly out of touch with what reality dictates. For example, Artifact, the clicky stick, lack of smooth locomotion in official projects, that kind of stuff. I've also been told that a lot of people internally do not take YouTube seriously as any kind of content generation platform, and instead view things like IGN and Polygon as the only way of getting information out into the public consciousness. That is very specific to my job, but then again, that's the kind of information I ask for sometimes. They're out of touch. However, you're very right. They're in a fragile position. There's a lot to unpack about this kind of stuff. And if you have any more information about your tour, I'd greatly appreciate it. Gabe actually helping out on an unannounced project? No idea. This is news to me. Very well could be the flagship VR title because they are very, oh so very close to releasing or announcing or something. However, it could be something we don't know about. He could be very, very interested in something else. Citadel, brain interfacing. I don't know. He is very interested in brain interfacing. It might be brain interfacing related, but I really hope they're not spending a whole lot of company and employee time on that because, as you said, their position is very fragile. Okay, so I've been told by like 10 or 15 different people, I don't know the exact number, 12, 13 people, that following the failure of Artifact, shit changed. Stuff really changed. And I have been told that there has been there's so many layers that need to be explained. This is the problem of this, is I can't sit down and write a video. When I write a video, I can go as far back as I need to because I have the time to write. When it's off the cuff, sometimes there's context that needs to be said, but then there's context for that context, and then it repeats on itself. Okay, let me back up. Valve for the longest time has hired people based on their ability to ship. Based on their ability to internally complete things and ship them internally. Valve values creators that are capable of creating things very efficiently and very consistently. However, from the public's perception, it seemed like they weren't doing anything, and the normal meme was, oh, created 2 hats for TF2, then flew to Hawaii and had some drinks on a beach. That was my work day, and that was the joke for like 8 years. Nowadays, the joke is Valve is sitting on top of their piles of money, stacked so high, we look like ants and they don't know what we want. And that's kind of how it is. And I feel like they're starting to realize that based on a couple of failures, Artifact, etc. So, the fact that Gabe is working on a game an unannounced project is huge news. That is huge news. There has been a shift internally where instead of prioritizing the ability to ship, you need to be able to publish. I don't know if you've been able to tell, but there has been a huge increase in publicly released content from Valve this year. And I think that definitely is a conscious move. The Counter-Strike team is shipping updates multiple times a month. They went from not even communicating for months to releasing random features we've been begging for years out of nowhere. We just got 5v5 scrims, non-competitive with competitive rule set. Out of nowhere. Underlords happened out of nowhere. They released the game unfinished. But because it's Valve, It's finished by other companies' standards. And they're realizing, they are learning now, A, their position is very fragile, thanks to a few things we'll touch on in a second. And B, they're out of touch in two ways. They're out of touch in what they think they know what we want, and they're wrong. And they think they know what we expect, and they're wrong. They think we expect perfection every fucking time. That's the reason why Team Fortress 2 updates take 2.5 years, because they think they need a weapon set, huge balance changes, new game modes, new maps, new cosmetics, skins, new features, new UI, balance changes, bug fixes, etc., etc. When in reality, we're fine with the counter. I can assure you, Team Fortress team, Dave Riller, Eric Smith, Jill, if you were to just ship a couple maps every few weeks, like the Counter-Strike team is right now, we would be so happy. If you just randomly shifted over to how the Counter-Strike team is working right now, we wouldn't complain. Ever. I assure you that. If the Team Fortress team just woke up one day and went, you know what, we're going to be active on Twitter, and we're going to ship very small content updates multiple times a month, we would be ecstatic. And that's how Valve is shifting. That's where they're going towards. They released Underlords before it was finished, and nothing went wrong. That is huge. I have been talking to Valve employees closely for about 3 years now. My job has put me in a position where I'm capable of talking to Valve employees every couple of days, every few weeks, for about 3 years now. HLVR has been in development for, I think, 3.5. Back in 2017, I was getting very close with a Valve employee who said they're going to do it, like they're going to hook me up with all this stuff, but I just need to be patient because we are the, quote, we are the busiest we have been in history. And if you knew what I was working on, you would tell me to get off the phone or get off the Discord call and go work on it. Now, at the time, I thought that was super fucking pompous and rude to say, but now looking back, that guy was right. So, they've been silently busy, like how you've described, for like 3 years now. They realize the importance of what they're currently working on. They have the most anticipated game in their hands. I can't even, like, I know more than probably anybody watching this, unless Valve is watching this. And Valve knows, I can't even explain just how important their next move is. And I have a feeling Valve gets that. Because a couple things happened in very quick succession. Artifact launched. Epic Game Store launched. Artifact failed. And the Epic Game Store, and Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic, has been out for Valve's jugular for months. And unfortunately, he is gaining hold. He knows what he is doing. You can say as much as you want about Epic being owned by the Chinese government and Tencent and all the exclusive bullshit that's going on. By the way, don't blame the developers, blame the publishers. It is not Tim Kane's fault that The Outer Worlds is on the Epic Game Store. That's Private Division's fault. But the Epic Game Store is gunning for Steam. Artifact proved to the world that Valve isn't a perfect developer. Proved to Valve. So, now they're trying to push VR. They have been working on virtual reality in some regard since like 2012. They have spent an ungodly amount of money on research and development for hardware. And in order to stick the landing, they need to release a perfect VR game. Otherwise, the entire enthusiast-grade market may fail, because unlike how the marketplace was when they started, Facebook now is trying to wall garden the VR marketplace and go standalone. Now, I've made a video that was very subtly pushing the... Well, not subtly, but some people probably didn't get it. that Facebook stole ideas from Valve, but Oculus stole ideas from Valve to sell to Facebook, and then they went on a different direction. Valve has been, whatever you have to say about Valve and their recent positions, or whatever you think about VR, Valve is the only company that has the ability to create the VR marketplace as an open market, not as like console wars exclusivity stuff. If HLVR is a killer app and will cause people to go out and buy even a Windows mixed reality headset and cause some kind of market saturation with hardware, it doesn't need to be the Index. It could be Windows MR, it could be the Vive, it could be even, hell, the first gen Oculus Rift would be fine, as long as it gets hardware into the hands of people, because they look at this game on a trailer or on a YouTube video and go, wow, what the fuck is that? Then they did their job. If they don't deliver on the wow, what the fuck is that factor, then it is very, very likely the enthusiast grade VR market is very close to just crumbling in on itself. They promised 3 VR games. That was a load of bull. Now there's one big VR game in development, and they need to stick the landing, because otherwise the Oculus Quest will become the standard. And that is the antithesis of what Valve wants. Standalone hardware. Building... Okay, so you spent $400 on your Oculus and you don't want to be told that it was a bad purchase? Beat Saber had to be significantly toned down to run at a consistent 72 frames per second. Beat Saber! That is the most simplistic game you could buy in VR. You're telling me you expect Boneworks to run on the Quest? Fuck off. You can't expect virtual reality to be the next generation or something that is unachievable on a computer if you're feeding developers multiple generations old phone processors. So Valve needs to stick this landing. They know that. And Gabe got off the exercise ball and stopped playing Dota against bots, I guess. This is news to me. There are a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of history. There's a lot going on. And it's stressful. There's a palpable tension in the air, according to J-Corp. Yeah. Do you get what I just explained to you? It's probably worse than that, because I'm looking at it through the eyes of an independent journalist who lives on the other side of the goddamn country, and only about a fourth of the company even takes me seriously. So I'm sure I'm lacking information. So... and that also answers the question, is HLVR coming out on the Quest?
No.
I don't know. Did I answer all the points I wanted to answer? Yeah, they're realizing that the Steam monopoly is faltering. It's not going to last forever. They're finally taking a look at other companies, and they need to. I was told that when the Epic Game Store first happened, Valve wasn't taking it seriously. I was told that they weren't taking it very seriously as of a few months ago. However, I'm sure a few things have slapped them in the face and went, hey, take it seriously. So, I don't know. Yeah. So that rant over. Let's take a call. Hello, you're on the air. Hello?
Hey, Tyler, what's up, man?
What's up? How you doing?
Doing good, man. You?
I'm great.
That's good to hear, man. So, I know you're talking about the International a little earlier, calling it or how you wanted it to be a ValveCon. But my question is that the CS community's been a little uppity right now because the International just got if I remember correctly, it's $31 million prize pool. Like, that's just a crazy amount of money. And meanwhile, the most recent majors for for Counter-Strike have been like $1 million.
Yep.
And so, even though their player bases and viewer bases are around the same, I just wanted to know why you think that maybe, Dota's getting a little more, I hate to say the word, but favoritism.
Oh, it totally is. It totally is. You're right. Yeah. It could be argued...
Let me say it for you, Tyler. That's an excellent question.
That's an excellent question. Shut the you're fired. Coleman, you're fired. You're not fired. I'm kidding. Okay, so it could be argued that Counter-Strike is actually more popular.
I've been to the Boston Major, just any area around in the East Coast I've been to, and normally within like the last day it's packed. Like you can barely change seats or move, or it's crazy sometimes.
The international, how do I put this? Dota is very popular in very specific regions. Counter-Strike is popular everywhere. However, Dota makes more money. I don't know why that is, but Dota does make more money. So the international started as a way to market Dota. Doug Lombardi talked about this in an interview that he did years ago, where he and a couple of the Dota team, back before they tried to... When they were working on the beta, it would have been like 2011, they were like, how are we going to market this game? Do we buy advertisements? Do we, invite the press? How do we, really show off this kind of game? It's completely different from anything we've ever done before. How do we show it off? And I think it was Doug that came up with the idea of, a competition that's broadcasted on the internet. And that evolved into the first international. So the international came from a marketing place. And it was... The first international was successful way beyond expectations. It was a small event, but it did way better than they expected it to. Way better than any traditional marketing or advertising for that game would have done. And so they started doing that every year, and now it's just a tradition. The major question of the Counter-Strike community is, hey, where is the Counter-Strike International? There's no reason there shouldn't be one. And that's not incorrect. There is no reason there shouldn't be a Counter-Strike International. Do you want to know the honest-to-God truth?
Yeah, sure, man.
Gabe plays Dota. Gabe plays Dota. Gabe does not play Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
That's it. There is I'm sorry, but there's a specific amount of... There's a finite number of employee hours that can be used day to day. And the International is an expected tradition. To be able to start up a Counter-Strike International would take just as much effort, if not more, because they're starting something from scratch, and those are man hours or employee hours or person hours that don't exist, and they're not valued. Counter-Strike having an international would likely be far, far more successful than a Dota one. It just would, but there isn't as much passion for something like that to be able to push forward. The Dota team is like twice or three times the size of the Counter-Strike team, and once again, Gabe Newell plays Dota. Gabe Newell does not play Counter-Strike. So what's funny is with Valve, the simple answer is usually the correct one. And you could say a lot of things about they just don't want to push that game because maybe it just gives them a bad name because it's terrorists, which I've heard many times.
The Score did a video on that was really out there.
It's not. It's literally not that. If the international, if Dota 2, if they chose to market Dota with commercials, A, Dota would not have been as successful, and B, Counter-Strike would have the international. They just would. The international has to be very difficult to put together. I mean, come on. They're doing this next one in China. Yeah. So that's got to be very difficult. So doing 2 of those a year is impossible, especially for a company that's trying to do 100 other things at any given time. Now, a solution in my head is to turn the international into a ValveCon so that you have the Dota competition and the Counter-Strike competition under the same roof. But that would never happen either. because the Dota fans would be, ah! Counter-Strike people would be, oh, cool, great. But then the Dota people would be very upset. I don't know. That doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. Counter-Strike is receiving significantly more attention nowadays than it did in the past. And the fact that we're getting these, like, in the last 6 months, we've had a complete change of how they deal with things. You know what I mean? We went from, like, what was it? Like an operation every year or year and a half for a period of time there to, like, maps, new weapons, gameplay changes, balance changes, maps. And it's just on a cycle. Plus the Twitter's going crazy. You know, the Twitter's memeing with pro players.
Yeah, they've been interacting a lot with pro players recently.
That's huge.
It's really good to see.
That is huge. The Dota team's not doing that. So if Valve, or the general consensus at Valve was Counter-Strike doesn't have a future, that would not be happening. So that doesn't mean sometime in the next 5 years we won't see official supported majors from, like, official put on majors by Valve. It could happen. The difference is Dota is just, it's the favorite. It's the one they like more. It's the one that the general consensus is we like that one more. Gabe plays Dota. Gabe does not play Counter-Strike. There you go.
Yeah. All right, thank you, man.
Thanks for your question.
Absolutely, man. Great to talk to you. Keep up the good work, brother, man.
Thank you. All right, we got a donation. Man, my voice is going. How long have we been doing this? We end at 2 hours. Let me know when we hit 2 hours. We're in an hour and a half. Okay, half an hour left. What's your view on... This is from Blind Entertainment. What's your view on Valve's current media marketing footprint? Great hardware, software sells itself, but I hardly see when they launch products. So, they have none. They don't do anything. So, what, like, yeah... They don't market. They didn't market the index. They allowed the community to market the index for them. They just invited some press people, put some stuff out, and just hoped that the hype drove it, and it did. There really hasn't been much attention. There hasn't really been much to advertise, right? Underlords is still very... It's an early access game. It's in beta. There's no reason to advertise a beta. Plus, it's already in the top 10 of Steam, and they haven't advertised it much at all. Valve, for the longest time... and I've had Valve employees straight up tell me... Oh, I missed a donation. I'll get to the other donations. I'm sorry, I missed a few donations. I've had Valve employees straight up tell me there's no need to hype people up. All we have to do is put it on Steam and it'll sell. Artifact proved that wrong, but for the longest time, Valve thought, we don't need to advertise. We don't even need to hype people up. We have the largest gaming marketplace in the world. As long as we sign our name to something and throw it up on the front page of Steam, it will sell. Obviously, the Valve of November of 2018 and the Valve of right now, completely different companies, completely different mindsets, and we need to see how they deal with HLVR's release to see how things have changed. What do I think of their marketing footprint? It doesn't exist, but it really depends on how they handle their next big release, which will be HLVR, the flagship VR title. Do you think that after HLVR releases there will be another Half-Life game, or will it be the last? I think Valve would want to punch you for asking that question. No disrespect, I'm sorry, but you have to wait to see what happens following the release of the game they're currently working on and the game they've been stressed out for 3 years about. It's very possible that HLVR is this huge success, and to quickly follow it up, they just make another campaign on top of it. We see like a second game be made within like a year or two. I don't think it's the last Half-Life game. I think after HLVR breaks the ice of being the first Half-Life game in 12 years, you're going to be seeing the Half-Life IP be utilized a bit more. It really depends on the response of HLVR. If HLVR ends up being a pile of crap, yeah, it could be the last Half-Life game. It could finally make them be like, you know, oh, okay, well, I guess we're done with that. But it just depends, you know. Do I think... here's another one from Blue Mew. That last question was from Jacob. This one's from Blue Mew. Do you think Nintendo and Valve will work together again? I don't know. I think it's possible you'll see our Underlords on the Switch. I don't think you're going to be seeing like an exclusive Nintendo title. Nintendo has tried to get Valve to make games for them for a while. You know, Gray told us about the time they went and visited them during the Wii, and they like pitched, you know, and they didn't do it. I don't know about the Wii U, but I think Valve actually said something in relation to the Wii U. They liked how the asymmetric whatever. And then, of course, they developed a Switch game for a while, and that got canceled. Are they going to be making an exclusive title? No, probably not. But it's very... Underlords is perfect for the Switch. I do think Underlords could very well get put on the Switch. Because, I mean, Underlords runs on a phone from, like, 6 years ago pretty well. So, I don't see the reason why not. But aside from that, I don't know. I mean, I don't think we're going to be seeing, like, exclusive Nintendo titles made by Valve ever. They've tried it too many times in the past. It doesn't get off the ground. You could see some ports maybe one day, or you could see Underlords. But other than that, I don't know. We're going to take an email. Oh, never mind. We got a donation. If HLVR fails, this is from Henk. If HLVR fails, could a community Half-Life game succeeding spark development at Valve? Or would they simply give up regardless? I don't think HLVR is going to fail. I think it's... I think they know what they're doing with this one. And I'm not going to go into exactly what I mean by that. I have a video that I've been working on for a while. But I don't think it's going to fail. However, could a community Half-Life project spark the development want to create a Half-Life game? No, because that spark always exists. The problem is just how difficult making a Half-Life game is, how difficult, you know, responding to community, what they feel is the community's, what would be the word? Like expectations, managing community expectations, and what's actually possible in the real world. There's just, you know, there's been like I could sit here and talk about like 3 or 4 different versions of Half-Life 3 that all ended in their own very unique way, you know. And I don't think there's anything the community could do that would let Valve know more that we want a Half-Life game. I think they know that loud and clear, and they've known that for a decade. It's just it's difficult to do it, and they're finally doing it, but they're relying on a lot of old thematic ideas and story beats and things. It's a prequel. It's a nostalgia-driven prequel, but that's done on purpose to sell units. I don't know. But I don't think there'll ever be a day where they just completely give up on Half-Life. But I mean, it is possible following HLVR that we never hear about Half-Life again. You know. Do you know if Valve will release any official add-ons for the Frunk, which is the front USB port for the Index HMD? I don't think so. I think the whole point is just to allow makers to make. If somebody internally comes up with a cool idea, then yeah, that's just how Valve works. If somebody has a cool idea that they think adds value to the product as a whole, then it'll be released. But the intention behind the Frunk is to allow makers to make. So I don't think you're going to be seeing much in terms of like accessories that you can buy. You know what I mean? But thank you for the questions. Find another email. Do you have any info on In the Valley of Gods? It's not being developed right now. Do you think Valve is doing a new Half-Life game, a VR game, because there isn't anything new to do with PC first-person shooter mechanics? No. No, they're doing an HLVR game because they need to sell VR hardware, and Half-Life is like the biggest name in PC gaming, period. Well, it was. I don't even know what the biggest name in PC gaming would be nowadays. Fortnite? But that's not even PC, it's I don't know. Minecraft? I don't they're using brand recognition to push units. There's nothing stopping them from making a completely new IP, but they're trying to sell units. So you said that you weren't going to be covering... Oh, wait. You weren't going to be covering Valve titles as much. Over time, I'm going to be covering Valve almost full-time for the next year and a half. What engine will HLVR be running on? Source 2. Alright, let's take another caller. Hello, you're on the air. What's your question?
Hello, big fan from Spain here. Yeah, throughout the years you've made kind of sad and videos venting at the fact Valve takes a shitload of time with everything.
Yeah.
My question is, at which point in Valve's history were you the closest of stepping away from doing Valve news and taking your channel in a different direction?
Probably late 2017 would have been the worst. Artifact was just announced, and everything that I learned about that game made me angry. I had recently heard about, you know, the Half-Life 3 cancellation in 2015, and I had heard about the Switch console games cancellation, and I just, like, all at once heard about a bunch of projects I was following. Left 4 Dead 3 cancellation. It seemed as if they were moving towards an area where I just didn't really seem to want to be covering. My life was really bad at that point. I'm not going to go into the personal life of stuff, but shit was bad. And that was the period of time where the only news I was hearing for about 6 months was all bad news. That's definitely changed. But at that time, it would have been from like September to like November of 2017. It was like all bad news. And if I had stopped Valve, I would have just immediately gone to Nintendo. Because it was also around that time that Odyssey came out. And Odyssey blew my goddamn mind in terms of just how much fun I was having with it. Because I'm like, being a Valve journalist or whatever you want to call me, it causes you to become emotionally jaded about the video game industry. Because you just learn about how fucking broken everything is all the time. But then, like, you play Odyssey and you feel like you're a kid, like, having fun with video games for the first time in years. So, you know, I could have just went in the direction where I could, you know, I don't know if you saw the history of Super Mario 64 video I did earlier this year.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed that very much.
I would have just gone in the direction of doing that stuff all the time. Just as obscure as a Nintendo game as possible, you know, 20-minute videos about For Whom the Frog Bell Tolls or Marvelous Another Treasure Island. And I would have had to get another job because that kind of stuff wouldn't have supported me, but I would have just, you know, I don't know. Stuff has gotten significantly better both in my own personal life and from Valve's perspective.
Yeah,
although it took a couple slaps in the face to get them to wake up, but yeah, definitely.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. Have a good day. All right. Did I miss a donation? I don't think so. Donations get answered first. My throat is starting to really hurt. We're at an hour 40. What info is known about a potential Portal 3? All right, speculation. Portal 3 has never existed. However, there have been 2 or 3 times in the past where Valve has attempted to push forward f-stop. And I've heard a couple times about a version of f-stop that was being developed near the tail end of Chet Falisak and Eric Wolpaw's existence at Valve. Eric Wolpaw has since returned, but I've heard about them trying to push f-stop. I don't know if it was a VR game or not. I've heard that it was a VR game at one point. But the closest thing that Portal 3 has been in development is f-stop making a return. And, yeah. Simple as that. Simple as that. I'm going to do another email. Thank you for the email. What is your current opinion of Classic Offensive? And if the team gave you an opportunity, would you release an exclusive report of the status of that mod? Thanks and poop soup. All right, this is by Adam. I love Classic Offensive. I love Zool. Would I do an exclusive report on the mod? Of course. If they let me, of course I would. They actually gave me a Steam build like 2 years ago, and I play it every once in a while to check up on it. Yeah, I love it. I love what they're doing. I wish Valve gave more freedoms to the Counter-Strike game set to allow more custom stuff to be developed. But I mean, I don't know who's in charge. Is Zool in charge of the team? I mean, if anybody from the Classic Offensive team is hearing this, yes, please let me do let me do a report on it. I'd love to. But I adore that. I adore that kind of stuff. That's my favorite stuff right now. From Tailor Made Stuff, we got a $5 donation, £5 donation, excuse me. Hey Tyler, do you think Valve could return to their back catalog with ports and remasters, or just let their fans do that? I don't think they would ever return and just release a bunch of remasters. I don't think we'd ever see that. It would take community members doing that because remasters have been pitched many times in the past and have been rejected. One of them, you know, somebody talked about it. I forget who talked about it, but somebody, like, it was reported that somebody pitched a Half-Life 2 remake and Valve said, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be us, but I assure you they're never going to do that because that requires looking back on things. And once again, that is just not how Valve works. So, but thank you very much for that. We're going to do another email. Since HLVR is pre-Half-Life 2 story-wise, who will be the person that will voice Breen since the voice actor died? Do you think they will find someone that sounds similar to Robert Culp doing Breen? I don't know. I think it's very possible that over the course of the last 12 years of Valve attempting to develop a Half-Life sequel, they got Robert Culp in once or twice before he passed away. When did he pass away? I honest to God feel like you can't replace that voice. Oh, he passed away in 2010. Maybe not. But yeah, I mean, would they get somebody to do a similar voice? I hope not. To be honest, I hope not. That voice is just so distinct. It's like, you want to know a funny story about Robert Culp? Did you know Robert Culp did an episode of The Golden Girls? So Robert Culp is the voice actor that did the voice of Breen, Dr. Breen, the welcome to City 17 guy. And Electra has been watching a lot of Golden Girls lately on Hulu. And I was just hanging out with her, and immediately, you know, Robert Culp is like, there's an episode where Robert Culp is trying to have sex with Blanche Devereaux. And it's like he's not even doing a different voice for Breen. It's just his voice. To the point where it's Dr. Breen trying to have sex with Blanche Devereaux. And it's such a distinct voice that it's like he knocks on the Golden Girls' door, they open it, and it's like, welcome to City 17. Immediately. So it's like, to me, that is such a distinctive voice that they would need to get a person to do a spot-on impression. Or just use archival stuff that we've never heard before, which I'm sure they have. But if you did that, either way, I don't think you should make Breen a very big character, because Breen isn't really that aware of Alex until Gordon shows up anyways. So, yeah. I don't know. That's a very interesting question. It's the same thing with Eli, but I'm sure they did more with Eli. I'm sure they recorded a few things with Eli before that voice actor passed away. He passed away much more recently. But I adore the voice of Breen. It's one of my favorite voices in the entire game, and that's not like me just exaggerating. I adore the voice of Breen. I think he's perfect for that role. to the point now where if I see Robert Culp in anything, I can't take it seriously if it's not like the villain. So I don't know. Hopefully they go the route of either Breen's not in the game, which I doubt. I think what they're going to do is either it's literally just still going to be welcome to City 17, or it's going to be like archival stuff from the development of Half-Life 2 and the episodes. I hope they brought him in to do some voice acting a couple times before he died. I really, really do. But then again, like, what's the legality of using a deceased actor's work? I don't know. Gonna take another caller. Hello, welcome on the show.
Hello. I wanted to ask you a question related to Half-Life and also Valve as a company. So, at the moment, obviously, most of their resources go to Half-Life VR, but there is a giant paywall because it's VR.
Mm-hmm.
And basing on what happened with Artifact and that the other games as Counter-Strike and Dota, they're not growing. There's no way for them to grow anymore. Do you think there is a very high chance of Half-Life VR actually failing? And if it fails, do you think Valve can actually recover from that?
Well, it depends what your idea of a failure is.
By not selling enough units or people getting extremely angry, which is most likely going to happen, that they can't play this game because it's only on VR.
So the whole point is to get a larger number of people to buy VR that wouldn't previously have purchased VR.
Yes, and my thing is that they're not putting probably enough money to marketing in the Valve Index, so obviously Half-Life will push that and make people know that it exists, because a lot of my friends, for example, only recently heard about it. It's because some of them are like, oh, do you know, it's actually better. It's better than Oculus. And it's from person to person. It's not because they read an article or because they saw a video, which just makes it really strange in a way that the only thing they rely on is Half-Life. And if Half-Life does not have the success that they expect it will, in what way do you think they will change directions? And do you think they actually have a backup plan for that?
I don't think they have a backup plan. I think they're so busy with the development of things that they really don't have time to think about, if this doesn't work, what would we do? I think they're developing it in the way that it can't not work. It needs to work. So, I think for it to have failed, it would need to be not only regarded as an annoyance of the community, but it would also need to be viewed as just a bad game overall. If it's like reviewed by the general gaming press as just a bad game, then they failed. And they would obviously need to change directions, but they would change directions by probably developing a better VR title.
But I'm scared of that, because when Dota 2 first came out, people said it's a bad game. That was the general understanding. For other reasons and prize pools and tournaments, it's changed. Same thing happened with CSGO. Same thing happened with Artifact. So that's why I'm scared about it in a way, that they're pulling everything they have on Half-Life VR for selling units.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the core of the problem is there's a large paywall for VR, and not everybody can afford that. But unfortunately, Valve is not in the mindset where they're trying to make VR more affordable. They're trying to make VR more attractive. Like I said earlier, they're not going to be releasing a non-VR version of HLVR because it defeats the purpose of developing it in the first place. They're also not going after the market of people that are never going to buy VR ever, because why? The whole point is to legitimize or popularize the idea of enthusiast level VR, the PC, utilization VR systems and stuff. And without it, they essentially have wasted millions and millions of dollars on research and development for VR enthusiast grade hardware over the last decade. So, it's a really strange situation where the core Half-Life fan base likely won't be able to experience the game up front, because the core Half-Life fan base, the people that are still sticking around, likely aren't the same people that want to be able to support VR, because they might be viewing it as one of the reasons why we don't have a traditional Half-Life 3.
That's why I ask you this question. Like, what's your opinion on this actually succeeding in that way? Because this is the biggest franchise they can actually use and the highest selling thing. And the core audience, it's most likely going to be disappointed in a way up front.
The game's not made for the core audience. The game isn't being made to market towards you or I. Anybody that's watching this show is likely not the target demographic for this game. This is trying to sell VR to just the general gaming public, because everybody played Half-Life 2, but not everybody remembers it as well as we do. You know what I mean? So because of that, they can use the iconography and the thematic ideas of Half-Life 2 to be able to make people remember the good memories that they may have of that game and push forward sales of VR to just the generalist gaming population, not to the people that are still modding Half-Life 1 and are still like speculating on where Half-Life 3 is going to be. We're not the audience that they're going after. So regardless of what we think, it could still be a success if it sells units to the same types of people that are going to go out and buy the next Xbox and buy the next PlayStation or buy a Switch Lite. It's just the generalist gaming population that they're going after. We are not the market. So it doesn't really matter what we think.
Okay, thanks. I hear it.
Yeah.
It's just strange to me because Half-Life is kind of a hardcore game, and for the general public, they will play like Beat Saber or some other VR game, and it's, I don't know, it's strange. It's strange for me, and probably for a lot of other people.
It's going to be very strange for anybody that plays Half-Life at all frequently, because mechanically it will look like a different game. They're not going to allow you to have smooth locomotion. You're going to be teleporting everywhere. There's going to be a limited number of weapons. But it's being made to be comfortable for just Joe Schmo off the street that's never touched VR in the first place. Like you said, Half-Life is incredibly intense. If they ported Half-Life 2 wholesale as a VR experience, it would make most people throw up. It's designed first and foremost to being the most comfortable thing, even for people that have never touched a VR piece of hardware in their life. So, thank you very much for your question. I appreciate it. All right, I think I'm gonna end it here. Thank you everybody that came out. Thank you everybody that came out and supported me on this show today, and I hope that everybody had a good time. Thank you for listening. And yeah, I'm Tyler McVicker. This is Letting Off Steam. Have a good day. Adios.